I'm Whitney.
I'm Mindy.
And I'm Deb.
We're three best friends who love nerdy things.
Well, some people think we're nerdy, but we think we're pretty awesome.
This is Our Nerdiest Thing.
Hello, fellow nerds, and welcome to Our Nerdiest Thing. Today, we will be discussing Pride Month book recommendations and a lot more. I was trying to think of something clever and didn't.
And the other nerdy things we usually speak about on this podcast.
Those fun things, too. Please make sure you listen all the way to the end. We have an interview with author Antoine Bandele, and he is a delight to talk to.
He is so freaking funny.
He is very funny.
I wasn't on that interview, but I felt like when we saw him at Imaginarium, he was like my best friend.
Yes.
It was like we hadn't seen each other for 5 years, and he was like, friend! And I was like, oh, hey!
Yeah, I kind of...
And he has braces, and
I
that makes him really adorable.
Like, does he think we're all the same person? Like, he wasn't sure who he actually talked to?
I will say, I have gone up to people at events that we've been to before, and they're like, Whitney, right? And I'm like, no, Deb.
Yeah, but we all have glasses, and we all have dark hair. Yeah. Yep. But he was really fun to talk to, so please make sure you listen to that. And before we get into any of our other nerdy things, Deb, will you please share with us our nerdiest cocktail?
Of course, tonight or today. We're actually recording during the day this time, and we don't normally do that.
The sun is out.
So that means that Mindy and I can't get like white girl wasted like we do sometimes. So we'll have to be careful. This drink is called Daddy Issues, and like I always say, you can get the recipe off of ournerdiestthing.com or follow us on Instagram and see what it's all about in our Thursday read-along. But it does have Fireball in it, which is quite tasty.
It's always a good time with
And you're
Fireball.
supposed to put really expensive cherry juice in it, but we just use grenadine because that's stupid. Because we make cocktails every week and we can't afford that shit.
Yeah, cherries are cherries, you know. That's fine. If it says cherry on the label, it's good enough.
Yep, that's what he said. Although that's messed up.
Unless you're a bougie ramen restaurant in D.C. that says there's cherry in a drink and there is not.
Why didn't you ask if it was bitter before you ordered it?
It was 4-day-old coffee that they said had vodka in it. It was not.
It was bad.
Oh man,
what a time!
Yeah. So if you're watching our studio feed, you can see it's like really pretty. It's kind of like pink.
It is.
Cheers. Yeah. Cheers.
It's like a grapefruity kind of flavor, kind of color.
Color.
Okay, yes, definitely on the color.
Not
also,
flavor,
our studio
color.
feed's on YouTube, just FYI.
Yeah.
You can like and subscribe.
Well, let's get into our nerdy news. We all three actually have nerdy news this week.
What? I always have nerdy news.
I know, but we don't.
Yeah, we don't. So,
Especially
Mindy,
me.
why don't you go first?
Well, I found a couple, just going with the theme of Pride, I found a couple of LGBTQ upcoming releases. So one is called A Darker Mischief by Derek Millman, and it comes out on July 2nd. And it's, quote, this is the quote that it's described as, which drew me in. A work of dark academia like no other. A boarding school thriller about a queer teen from Mississippi who finds himself swept into a world of old money, privilege, and the secret society at the heart of it all.
Ooh.
I'm always drawn to series like stories with a secret society for some reason.
Well, and you put dark academia in there, and I'm like, I'm in.
I know, right? She's in like half a seat.
What was the movie from like the late 90s? Or
The Skulls.
The Skulls.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, didn't have
That's
Ryan
what
Felipe.
That's what
in
I'm
it.
thinking.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's who it was, but that sounds right. It was that era.
It was exactly what you think a secret society movie will be about.
A bunch of white boys.
Yeah, and then there's a girl that gets in too deep, and like he's
sure.
got to save her, and some people die.
I don't know why those always intrigue me. I just think it makes for a really good story.
I like it in a book.
Yeah.
I don't think I ever saw the movie, but I remember
The Ritual
movie.
by Chantal Tessier that Mindy thought was paranormal romance is about a secret society.
Okay, well then maybe I will like it.
That's like me thinking every book is
Mindy,
about
don't
me.
read it.
Mindy, you won't like
I got
it.
enough to
keep
read
telling
anyways.
you.
I have enough to read
gosh,
it.
Very intense sexual scenarios.
Oh.
Like BDSM stuff.
Oh, no thank
Yeah.
you. No thank you.
I don't know that I disagree with that. I like me some Vicious from J.R. Ward.
No, that's not intense.
Okay. So moving on. The next one I found was called I Will Never Leave You by Kara A. Kennedy, and it doesn't come out till July 23rd, but it's about a girl who's being haunted by the ghost of her toxic ex-girlfriend.
Oh.
And this ghost gives her an ultimatum to either help her possess another girl or be framed for her murder.
Oh.
So that seems kind of dark and twisted and fun.
I've told my husband if he sleeps with my friends when I die, I'm going to haunt him.
I'm going to haunt Robbie no matter what.
Me too.
You're like, I'll never let go.
It doesn't matter what he does.
I'm just going to play practical jokes on here.
Right. So like it means a lot when the meaning changes when you're alive or dead. Because if you're like, I'll never let go, and then like you're dead and you're like, I'm never letting go. Poor Robbie.
Forever.
Robbie's gonna come over and be like, she's here. I'll be like, I just wanted you to come over so we could like see you and the kids, and he's like, she won't leave.
Oh, that's probably true. I have two nerdy newses. Nerdy's news. What's the plural of that?
Nudie.
Nudie nerds.
Nerdy news items.
Nudie nerds is going to be our new segment for our YouTube subscribers only.
That's just Whitney's segment.
That's our Patreon, our new Patreon idea.
OnlyFans Our Nerdiest Thing. The podcast in the nude.
We would make us so much money.
That's for people who have a fetish with awkward people.
They're like, their boobs jiggle boobily when they laugh all the time.
Oh man, good times, good times. Okay, well, the things that I have to share for the nerdy news do not have that kind of vibe at all. The first is Riley Saker's new book, which is not that vibe. Middle of the Night, I've talked about it a little bit.
Have you finished it yet?
No.
Okay.
I'm still, I think maybe 20% in. I'm still pretty early on.
In your defense, I drove for 12 hours the other day.
Yeah,
so
I have
listened to
not.
like 7 hours of it.
But that did come out last week. So you've got, it's kind of true crimey so far anyway.
Yeah, it doesn't have the as much of a paranormal twist as some of his other stuff does.
Okay.
Yeah, it's more true crime.
I'm going to not wait for that then. Because
Right.
I'm like, when's the ghost coming, right?
So there is ghosts. It's
yeah.
just not. You're not going to get the same thing like The House Across the Lake, where you're
Right.
like, wait, there's like a spirit in the water.
Right.
Yeah, it's not like that. But it was. I haven't wrote my full review yet, but I said I can't decide if it's 3.5 or 4 stars. So
Ooh.
I can't decide.
Well, we'll see when I finish. We'll see what I think too. But I like it so far. It is very true crimey. So a kid disappeared and now we're 30 years later and stuff is happening. And that's pretty much what's going on. And then this is not until September, but friend of the podcast, Elle Mitchell, she has a new duology coming out. And the first book is called Pretty Poisoned. And it's going to be September 9th, 2024. So I wanted to just throw that out there. It's a Why Choose rock star dark romance where the rock stars are brothers. And she's putting a very big emphasis on the dark in dark romance and said that there's a lot of blood play.
But the brothers don't hook up, right?
I have no idea. I really
Elle
don't
Mitchell,
know.
so you can never tell.
I know. Well,
She likes to. She likes to
She
put it
says
out there.
she's been saying check the trigger warnings like hardcore.
She
and
always says that, though.
No, I don't know. There's
A brother
there's never
on brother
been-
might be my limit.
I was gonna say there's not blood play in her other stuff.
That's true.
So
True.
I need more information before I'm like, yeah, I'll arc read that. I need to know more.
Sometimes blood play can mean different things too. Like I was reading a book, which I'm not into this, and if you are, that's okay. But like he like took his knife and like put his initials in her thigh. Like that's technically blood play.
I get the feeling that is not what's happening in this book.
Technically, all the vampire paranormal romance I read has blood play in it.
Well,
that is true.
Yeah.
So
I don't think that's what we're talking about here. Just the vibes she's given off.
we're not
it
getting
feels,
Saltburn blood play, are we?
Genuinely, that's kind of the vibe that I'm getting from her warnings. It's like Saltburn kind of stuff.
Okay.
I would say weirdness, but
I
feel
really
like
love
that's
Elle, and
negative.
she's an excellent writer.
She really is.
I'm going to let
So,
you read that and then tell me.
I'm gonna find out more before I arc read it. But she's great, and it's in September.
Oh, cool.
And it fits Pride Month because it's
White shoes.
Does white shoes automatically fit into?
Oh, I guess
No.
not necessarily.
Yeah,
'Cause
it
That would
doesn't,
be
does it?
polyamorous.
Yeah,
It doesn't mean you're queer.
because the bonds that tie isn't.
Yeah, that's true.
Man, I wish it was.
There was no brother play in that either.
No.
I just wanted some Atlas and Gabe play.
Me
That's
too.
it.
Yeah,
Come on.
apparently-
Where is that novella, Jabri?
Oh man! All right, Deb. What is your nerdy news?
So I have two. My first one, it just comes out this week when this is releasing. It's Sleep by Death by Kaylin Barron, who we met at Imaginarium last year, and it is a cursed Snow White retelling.
Oh,
And she does all YA. Her stuff stays pretty light trigger wise, but she's an excellent writer. And then the second one is The Glass Sword by Kim Alexander. It's the fifth book in her New World Magic series, where consequences beget consequences. Amid dying kingdoms and the dying embers of old loves and older hatreds, friends become betrayers, lovers keep secrets, and someone or something is out for blood red revenge.
ooh!
I felt like I was
Kim.
Yeah, she's
great.
really, really great. So, yeah, that comes out, and I know she's looking for ARC readers for it. And if you've not read the first 4 books, she will let you ARC read those too. So, yeah, that's
awesome.
Yeah, not
Sounds
much is
fun.
really coming out in the next week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I did find Keanu, when I was looking for book releases, Keanu Reeves has a book coming out like late July.
Does he now?
It's a fiction. I was like,
Oh, like
that
it's not
Keanu
like a
Reeves?
memoir?
No, and he
Oh.
wrote it with somebody, and I was like, I'm going to save that for later because it's not until later in July. But I was
Okay.
like, Keanu, there's only one Keanu Reeves, right? Like this isn't some random author Keanu Reeves. But yeah, I thought that was super random.
I need to look it up while we're talking, but I just finished a book where she was like, oh, no, it was a book where like she is obsessed. Oh, it's Leather and Lark, where she is obsessed with Keanu Reeves. Which I think is hilarious. Constantine's era Keanu Reeves, which I think is really cute.
Yeah, that's Leather and Lark. So, speaking of Leather and Lark.
Yeah, speaking of that, that's what I'm reading right now.
Is it?
Yeah. Well, so I haven't quite
I mean, book
started.
clubs like in 2 days.
Yeah,
so you have
I got 2 days to read it.
I read it really fast.
I was going to say it's definitely one of those that I feel. I mean, I read Butcher and Blackbird in one day.
Yeah,
So.
it was the same kind of read for me.
So I can see me just diving in, and I'll probably have to leave the house though because my family will not leave me the fuck alone.
Same.
I'm like, because
Same.
my husband works from home now, and so it's even worse. Like in the summers, like my kids used to bug me, but now it's mostly my husband, and I'm like, leave me. I'm just going to go to a coffee shop or something. I love you, but no.
Yeah. No, I'm the same.
So, but yeah, that's what I'm reading.
Well, I hope you enjoy it
I'm sure I will.
because, well, I enjoyed it. I don't know if I should say since we haven't had book club to discuss it, but I liked it.
I liked it. Nothing's ever going to beat Butcher and Blackbird because that book was just kind of brilliant and funny, and there's still not really
I was
anything
going to say
written
there's
like it.
nothing like that. But
And she really set her up. It's going to be very hard for her to top that.
Yeah.
But I will say I did really like Leather and Lark.
It was really good. Yeah. I liked it. Deb, what are you reading?
I am ARC reading Beneath These Cursed Stars by Lexi Ryan. She wrote the Hollow Vows duology that I actually fell in love with last year. And so I just saw that it was her and requested to ARC read it. And I knew it was her next book in fantasy because she also writes contemporary romance. Little did I know that the book is set in the same world as the Hollow Vows duology. It's just 3 years later, and it's about her sister, the one that was kept captive by the king.
Oh.
So, like, she's out and, struggling with all of her PTSD, and it's all her story about, the uprising against now her sister queen's throne. So, really exciting. It's been really good so far.
Nice.
But when I was like, wait, I know these characters. 'Cause I typically, if it's an author I love, I don't read the synopsis. I like to be surprised.
Yeah.
And I was like, wait, I know these guys. Hey.
It's like not as much world building as you maybe thought it was going to be.
Right. Yeah.
That's a nice surprise. Well, Deb will be thrilled to hear what I've finished reading Manacled. So
finally. God.
You're welcome.
Tell them how many stars you gave it, Whitney.
I did give it 5 stars. I'm going to go ahead and just do my convince you to read it. I know, what am I, 2 years late on the trend? Or only one?
No, I read it in January.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm not as late. I thought it was like 2 years behind everybody else.
Well, it's because
But that's okay.
it's been out for a while, but also that's how much I've bugged you about it.
That is true. So it's a Bookstagram favorite, and I was realizing when I finished reading it that somehow I have avoided spoilers for Manacled, even though I've seen people talking about it a lot, which is
People
nice.
are really good about not sharing the spoilers.
I realized like, I genuinely don't know what's going to happen as I'm finishing reading this, and I thought that was nice of everybody. So thank you to the internet at large. I'm looking over to thank you
Looking at the camera.
to the internet for not spoiling
Thank you
it
to
for
our
me.
5 subscribers for not telling me what this is about.
So, Deb, I think your description is best when you said that it's Handmaid's Tale meets Harry Potter, right?
yeah.
Voldemort won and Harry died. And that is exactly what it is. But I was really under the impression that, because I think it did do this for a lot of other people, but just not for me. I thought that it was going to emotionally devastate me, which is part of the reason why I didn't want to read it for so long.
I don't know how it didn't emotionally devastate you.
It just didn't. I don't know. It just didn't.
Maybe your kids were interrupting you too much.
That's probably true.
Yeah.
Honestly, that's probably true. So I was happy that it did not like send me into that like sobbing in my bed kind of place, because that's why I avoided it for so long.
Right.
So I was happy that didn't happen. But then I also kind of felt like, is there something wrong with me? But
Well, yes, but not that.
I think I don't know. I think maybe I'm just like in the wrong time of my cycle or something to not be emotionally damaged. I'm not sure. But while it did not bring me down into depths of despair, it was a really beautiful story that I really can't say enough good things about. I will not be referring to this as a fanfic, even though that's technically what it is. But I think that term fanfic just has too much negative connotation for something as brilliant as Manacled. And like, okay, yes, it is an already established world and it's already established characters. But this writer didn't turned not only the story on its head, but also the characters. Like the characters are not the same characters that you would be expecting from Harry Potter.
They are fundamentally changed by losing the war.
Yes,
and doing
even before
horrible
that,
things.
Even there are some flashbacks before the end of the war. They are not the characters you.
They are
think.
doing horrible things to survive.
Yeah,
all of them are.
All of them are. Yeah. It was really good. There is a feminist reading in this story, Handmaid's Tale vibes that I wasn't expecting. Like I just didn't really know that that's what it was, right? That I really, really loved. Like that's my favorite part of the story, I think. And it was very beautifully written. It was very well thought out. It's creative and it stands on its own as a Harry Potter adjacent story that really is a lot more than a fanfic, way better than The Cursed Child.
I would say it in the Harry Potter universe, it's better than any Harry Potter book I read.
I would agree. It's up. It's right up there with Deathly Hallows for me.
100%.
It's great.
Okay,
it's
so
really good.
because I know I'm going to get peer pressured into reading this now.
Not only by us, but by people in our Instagram feed too.
They're like,
Well,
okay,
no pressure for me because I get it.
but how does one acquire this?
It's on
AO3, the Archives of Our Own, and you can download it and send it to your Kindle that way.
Okay,
that's what I did.
I think our listeners might want to know that too. So
that's a good point. Yeah, you can just look it up, like Manacled PDF or something like that, and or send Manacled to your Kindle, and then it'll pop up and you can download the whole thing.
So I will say the author also worked with an artist, and there's illustrations within the book as well.
Yeah.
And I actually, as soon as I was done writing the book, went to that author's Redbubble and bought a bunch of the illustrations because they're really beautifully done.
Yeah, it was really, really good. And like, there's a lot more that I would like to say, but obviously I'm not going to, because then that would spoil a bunch of stuff.
So interesting about that author is she got a trad publishing deal for Manacled, but I don't know how they're going to get around the copyright.
I know.
How did Cursed Child do it?
I think
did they get
J.K.
permission
Rowling signed off on that?
Yes.
Yeah, I think she got money and stuff for that. Like, you know what I mean?
Well,
so,
I mean, she's on the book too.
Like she's part of the writing team, isn't she?
Yes.
Yeah. So I think that with this, because kind of what really made this book so captivating too, and why the author was able to take it so far, was because she didn't have the world build. So if she has to world build in this new iteration of it, I don't know if it's going to be the same.
No,
because you're already very connected to these characters.
Yeah.
Right.
True.
So I think if you're not a Harry Potter fan, you could read it and understand it. But I think if you are a Harry Potter fan, then it just hits in a different way.
I would agree with that.
Yeah.
It was really good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Read
5
it, people.
stars.
Yeah.
It was good.
1 million stars from Deb. It's been my favorite book so far this year, and nothing's bumped it out.
Yeah, it was really, really, really good.
It was my first book of the year too, so like nothing's bumped it out yet. I'm like, well, shit, it can't get.
You should have saved it for the summer. Well, let's go into what we're watching.
What are you watching, Whit?
I finished Bridgerton season 3.
Me too.
Yeah, me too. But I'm watching some other things, but I want to talk about Bridgerton first.
I have a lot of things to say. What did you guys think about it?
It was okay.
That pause before anybody answers says it all, doesn't it?
My pause was I saw a lot of people complaining about it, and I thought it was fine.
I thought it was okay.
Having said that, and spoilers here, fast forward 30 seconds if you don't want to hear spoilers. I don't see why the Queen was just cool with it.
Yeah, it felt a little contrived.
I did like, though, that Colin was like, I see you, and like, I get who you are, and like, you're this excellent writer. And at first I thought she quit writing altogether, and then they had like the little epilogue or whatever. I did still really like it, but the Queen thing kind of bothered me. And then do you guys realize, my daughter pointed this out to me, so whenever their mom, Violet, tells Francesca, when I met your dad, like I couldn't even speak and all that. And then she meets her husband's cousin at the end, and she can't speak, right? In the books, that is her husband, but they've gender bended it to make her queer, which I think is also kind of cool. But what are they going to do with that? She's just not going to be married anymore?
Well, I looked this up because I saw people were talking about you're taking away a huge part of Francesca's story. So apparently when she marries in the books, the cousin that shows up, infertility is a huge part of her story, trying to have kids. And so a lot of people were like, well, hold on a second. This infertility storyline happens with the second husband. And if there is no second husband, if it's going to be a woman, or you're going to take out all the infertility stuff. And so a lot of women I saw were like, that's kind of why I like Francesca, because I struggled with that too. And I was like, okay, this makes more sense.
So the second husband helps get her pregnant? Are they like in a polyamorous? Spoilers, we already said.
Her first husband dies.
In the book, yeah.
Her first husband dies. Like they're only married for a couple of years, and he has like a stroke or something. And dies in his sleep.
Okay.
And then she like falls in love with the cousin and marries the cousin. And then like, you know, they're trying to have a family and they can't.
Okay.
And
so I'm assuming he is going to die and she's going to have feelings for this woman then.
That's what everybody's assuming, which there could still be, you know, like she could have a twin brother or something that could still step in, but they didn't show that in the show, right? So, because I was like, why is everybody like? I didn't read the books, right? So I don't know.
I thought the whole time she was queer.
We talked about that.
Her character has never seemed really into that guy. It feels like they are hiding
a great
something.
Friendship.
I told my daughter, I wonder if they're both each other's bear. If he's also gay, maybe she already knows she's gay. I mean, I don't know, but I never felt like her character, to quite frankly, was very boring for me.
Agreed.
Okay. So I feel like I have so many things to say that we should just have another Bridgerton episode. But the thing with the Queen, I hated that whole scene with Penelope, like, I am Lady Whistledown. Because first of all, it did very much feel like what happened to all the stakes of, you know, Colin being so upset that you're going to ruin everybody's lives in the Bridgerton family. And then the Queen was like, okay,
she had
bye.
already written the letters, though, and told them she was going to do it.
Well, but there were no consequences because the Queen was like, cool, bye.
Gossip is fun.
Right. And I was just like, what? And then it really bothered me that Colin just let her stand up there by herself after they had the conversation where she specifically said to him, I want you to stand beside me and support me. I thought they were like setting that up for him to literally be next to her.
Okay. Having said that, now Penelope and I do not have the same personality, but you could argue that he was standing by her by letting her stand up for herself.
I just didn't get that.
Yeah.
I didn't get that.
I don't know. Like, now that I'm sitting here thinking about it, she wants to, like, if you think about it, because remember there was the whole thing about like, well, you can help me write my book, which she does end up doing. But like, and she was like, no, I want to stand on my own. I want to be my own person. So maybe it was sort of.
Well, she offered to help him with his book and he didn't want her to.
No,
it was the other way around.
But like later on, there was this whole thing about like, well, you can always just, you know, when he was trying to talk her out of like, you don't have to do this Whistledown thing. You can help me with my book. And then at that point, she's like, well, then you're taking away a piece of me.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, I see both sides. But it did seem, I don't know, I think maybe the stakes were a little higher with her being up there by herself, too. It
didn't land for me.
It felt a little more, until the Queen was like, oh, okay, whatever.
Yeah, bye.
Yeah.
I would not have liked it if he had gotten up there with her.
But like, what was the point of that whole conversation then? You know what I mean?
For him to support her as a writer, not to support her, I feel like, physically. Did
we actually see him support her as a writer, though?
Yeah. Because she keeps writing, and then she does help him write his book.
Okay, it did not land. It did not land for me at all. Because she's like, I need you to support me, and then he's like, well, guess what? I'm not going to talk to you. And then they're not talking. They're fighting. They're not talking. They're not communicating. And then they show up at this party, and she's up there by herself.
Because
you know what I mean?
She had sent him a letter. Which we don't know the contents of it, but I think you're supposed
so
to.
It's like,
I think you're supposed to suspend disbelief, and like the letter solved a lot of problems, right?
I guess
that's what I got from it.
But if I hated it,
what was weird?
I did.
I can't tell at all.
I hated it.
What was weird to me was that last little bit where she's like, they're like talking about it, and they kind of come to that impasse, and then he says, I can't remember exactly what it was, but her last thing to him was like, maybe we don't have to give everything up, basically, because I think he says something like, I love you and I want to be with you, but I can't. So then I thought she was going to tell him her plan. And then it turns out to like all these letters, and then the mom gets a letter. I still don't know what was in the letter to the mom.
I think she was telling the mom
just a
she
heads
was
up.
Going to do that.
Yeah.
It was confusing.
I felt like that conversation of like, stand beside me and support me prepared me for something that then didn't happen. You know what I mean? Yeah. And then I was like, well, I don't understand. I didn't get what you were trying to get me to get.
And I
guess
I really do feel that is like a personality difference, because you wanting your husband to stand up next to you is literally standing up next to you, right? And the way I want my husband to stand up next to me is for me to stand up on my own. So I think it's just personality of like, how would that actually be? I don't know if Penelope was a strong enough character at that point, though, to want to stand up there by herself.
Yeah.
And it's not strong if you do want your husband up there, but I feel like knowing she is a wallflower, that's what she probably did want.
I kind of felt the same way, just thinking like this conversation prepared me for something that ended up not being what it was. I felt the exact same way, what you were talking about a second ago with the mom and Francesca, where she's like, you know, I thought that was a really beautiful conversation of like, I had this idea that love only looks this one way, and you've shown me that, you know, not all love looks the same.
They're not in love.
But I was like, I thought that was a really nice moment of like a mom trying to just like be there for her daughter and support her daughter, whatever. And then it was like, oh, you don't actually love this guy? Well, then what are we doing here? You know what I mean? Like, I felt like the whole rest of the season was trying to set up this thing that then ended up, I was very confused.
I wonder if he knows she's queer.
I don't know. Why
would she be doubling down so much on it? You know
I did see a quote from an interview that the showrunner did that basically said, like, she just, the way that I understood the quote, I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was basically like, I am the showrunner, I am a queer woman, and I wanted to like make Francesca like me. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, okay, but I didn't get that. I didn't get that the whole time. You know what I mean? Right, and I was just very confused by it.
I do wonder, too, if this is one of those seasons that would have made more sense if you had read the book. You know what I mean? Maybe. I feel like these have gotten really, really popular, and maybe the showrunners felt like they could take more liberties because people would know. Maybe. Right? Like, we've talked about Red, White, and Royal Blue. They take this whole love letter part out that is like what really makes the book so beautiful, and they don't put it in the movie. And it would have been hard to put into a movie. Well, no, it wouldn't have. But
no, it wouldn't have.
But
do a montage.
I think that they assumed. Right. I think they assumed. I'm just picturing them in the dressing room.
That's what I was thinking too. With like fancy hats and
everyone's watching to see what you will do. But I wonder if like you do read Penelope's letters in the book.
I don't know.
Because
that's a good question.
Then those scenes would be like, you'd be like, oh, that the mom is reading that one part.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. That
might be true. I don't know.
If you read the books, we would like to know if those are in there. And these are on my TBR for some time,
right?
But they're honestly kind of at the bottom of it.
Of the priority.
I don't read tons of non-fantasy Regency.
That's kind of how.
Yeah.
I have one last question about this Bridgerton thing, and then I'll be quiet, and you guys can talk about what else you're watching if it's different than Bridgerton.
Well, mine was Bridgerton. So okay. I saw your notes, and I just wrote same Whitney.
I didn't see that. So okay, did you guys feel that this is the spiciest season of Bridgerton?
No.
Mm-mm.
Okay. Who said that?
Nicola and Luke.
He doesn't even lay on her all the way while they're fucking.
Okay, so I saw that a bunch of fans are like, they must have deleted scenes.
I wonder.
And
no, the spiciest scene was the first one.
The producers are like, we didn't delete anything. And so I'm like, okay, I don't know what happened.
There was only one sex scene.
She and Nicola and Luke, in I think more than one interview, have made a really, first of all, golf claps to them for the PR that they've been doing for the season, because their interviews are fantastic. They have really great chemistry together. They've been hyping. I've enjoyed watching their interviews more than I liked watching the actual show, the season, honestly. Like, it was just way better, them interacting together as their actual like real people. But she said this was the spiciest season they've ever done, that they broke furniture because they got so into it filming their sex scenes that
one chaise lounge that they
that's what I'm saying though, because I'm like,
I guess she was on top of him at the very end. I guess there was 2 sex scenes.
I'm like,
the second one was barely a sex scene.
What are y'all talking about? Like, what
and
what
I'm
is
sorry,
this?
They were like making love. You don't break furniture with that.
That's what she said, that they got told to tone it down because they were too into it and like taking it too far. And then you watch the season and I'm like, where is this?
I'm going to say one more thing and then we can shut up about this. I don't understand why in the scene where they do, like, not the very last scene where they're having sex, but the one on the chaise lounge, why he is like holding himself up off of her and like gazing into her eyes like that. Like, that, I'm sorry. Like, why? Like, especially it's her first time. It was like, does that hurt? Does it hurt? Like, that's what I felt like he was like looking. I'm like, and like, he like had like one hand on his waist and the other one on the board behind her, and I'm like, are you gonna touch her at all? Like, me and my almost 17-year-old daughter, I want to point that out, she's not like 6, we're watching it and we're laughing,
right?
It was so awkward,
but they set it up to be like, oh, you guys just can't even wait.
So if
episode 5 is going to be so much hotter,
if they made them
like,
tone it down, that might explain why it felt awkward.
Maybe, I don't know.
Maybe. But I also don't feel like the character of Colin is super sexy.
I don't either. But
I think he's a bit of a pansy.
But yeah, I don't know if the editors...
He would put it in your butt without asking.
Yeah.
I don't know if the editors did them dirty. I don't know what happened, but I feel like what they have been saying in their interviews and what actually is on the show, there's a huge disconnect there. And I'm like, were you guys just lying?
No, I bet stuff got edited out.
That's what and now the producers are like, no, we didn't edit anything out.
I think you did.
Well,
maybe you didn't.
So now it's a weird.
Well, maybe they didn't take out extra scenes, but they had to have edited those scenes. So maybe they edited out what they told them to like tone down on. But yeah.
Oh, I know I said that was going to be my last question. I just have one more comment.
We've been talking about Bridgerton for 14 minutes, by the way.
No, that's okay.
It's our nerdiest thing, and that's what we want to talk about.
Why did they spend so much time humanizing Cressida to have Cressida just be the biggest bitch in the world at the why? I don't understand. Why did we spend all that time not on Penelope?
Have another arc coming up. She has to.
Maybe, but I'm like, you spent all that time not on Colin and Penelope to like get me to like her and understand her so much more, and then she's still a heinous bitch at the end and still like really making horrible choices. But I don't understand why did we spend all that time for nothing?
The only thing I can think about with that is that like she's trying to be a better person, but she still ultimately is the product of what she was raised.
Yeah, that's true.
So,
but I hated that. I would rather have gotten another sex scene of Penelope and Colin.
Yeah,
that wasn't really a sex scene.
An actual sex.
I did feel bad for Cressida though, because her mom was like, "Well, see ya."
Yeah, I know.
That's true.
Your dad's right. I did all this to you, but go on.
Well, see you later. That's so true.
Enjoy your big gulp.
Yeah. Were you guys watching anything besides Bridgerton? Mindy, I think you said you were.
I actually started a series that it's really much different than Bridgerton. This was a recommendation to me from a friend of mine, and it's called Them. It's on Amazon Prime, and it's actually about a black family in the 1960s who moved to an all-white neighborhood in LA. It's during the Great Migration, so they came from North Carolina to LA. And not only do they have to contend with the whole racial discrimination nightmare, but there's a paranormal aspect that threatens them also.
Oh.
It is the creepiest show that I've watched in a long time.
Where is it streaming?
It's on Amazon Prime.
Amazon Prime.
Yep.
Okay.
And I'm only a couple episodes into it, but I'm already freaked out. Yeah, it's really good.
I'm listening.
I know. I'm like, maybe I'll watch that later. Is it a show I could watch in my studio, or do you have to pay more attention than that?
Maybe.
That's not helpful.
Yeah, I don't know.
Pay more attention.
Yeah, you probably do need to pay a little more attention. Again, I'm really early on in it, so you get a lot of like the backdrop of the 1960s and the racism and that kind of
setting
stuff.
the context. And stuff.
I'm just now getting into the paranormal aspect of it.
I also am the one that started watching Outlander while crafting, and then all of a sudden was like, "Wait, what are Jacobites?"
Outlander, I would say, is a lot. You need to pay a lot more attention to than this, though.
Okay, that helps. Thank you.
What about what you guys are listening to?
I'm listening to The Rom-Commers by Catherine Center. It's really funny so far. It's about a rom-com writer who meets up with a famous like movie screenwriter who's like the big hit of the time, you know, and he has written a rom-com to work with the studio to like get his action flick produced. They're like, you have to give us this other thing first. And apparently it's like awful. And so she gets sent in to fix it. He's grumpy and doesn't believe in love. She does believe in love. You know, those types of things.
Yeah, it's really going to happen.
I know. And she's forced to stay at his house right now. I have no idea what's going to happen.
Does he only have one bed?
No, he does have 5 guest rooms because, you know, he's like a screenwriter. But
does he have a horse?
I don't know.
Only one.
I hope he only has one, and they have to like ride into the heather. Yes. But it's really funny so far, and I really enjoyed it.
I hope he rides a horse to work. I'm just picturing that
Well,
in like LA.
he seems like a hipster, pretentious dude, so he could. Or a unicycle.
Oh, protect the earth. What are you listening to, Mindy?
I am listening to the new Helena Hunting release that'll be out on July 11th. It's the second one in her Toronto Terror Hockey series, and it's called If You Want Me, and it's a it's a dad's best friend age gap, which
I'm listening.
yeah, I'm not usually on board with, but it's also my girl Helena, so I'm giving it a go. It's actually, I'm really enjoying it so far.
Every time you say Toronto Terror, I think the Rurger.
The Roger from 30 Rock.
Right. Toronto Terror.
Well,
Yeah,
the
that's
funny
hard to
thing is
say.
their mascot is like a mad goose,
Oh my gosh.
which makes it even funnier.
Mad like crazy?
Yeah.
Or,
Yeah, or like
That's pretty
an
funny.
irritable goose. Yeah,
That's pretty
Is he
hilarious.
silly?
He's a silly
He's
Billy.
a silly goose.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Well, I'm listening to Middle of the Night. I'm still pretty early on. So far, I like it, and hopefully, I'll have more to say next time because hopefully, I'll be finished with it. We'll see.
If not, that's okay. I do want you to text me when you're done with it, though, and let me know what you think.
Yeah. Oh, I will. I like it so far.
Yeah, I did like it. I just can't. There's one sticking point for me.
Now I'll be on the lookout, on the listen out.
Well, what are you loving then, Wint?
Well, I actually changed my answer because as we were recording this, I posted Justin Timberlake getting arrested memes this morning.
They're so funny.
We
So
have
funny.
gotten a lot of really positive responses.
Yes.
We don't normally get this much interaction on our memes, and I'm proud of that. I'm proud of the memes.
They're hilarious.
I was nervous about it because I was afraid that people were going to be like, "Don't be mean. He's going through a hard time," and then everyone was like, "Ha ha ha."
He's not going through a hard time. He got a DUI. I mean that.
Well,
that
for him, it probably is a hard time,
right?
but
Well, I guess I read something where he was like looking at the cop and he's like, "This is going to mess up the world tour," and the cop goes, "What world tour?"
apparently the cop was like 22 and has no idea.
no idea who he
He's
is.
like a fresh out of cop school, whatever.
I saw a meme
has no idea who
that
he is.
had that
You know,
conversation.
his mom is like, "What the fuck, man?"
I saw a meme though that showed that conversation, and they're like, "That's my new excuse for everything."
It's gonna ruin,
ruin my
tour.
world tour.
It's gonna ruin the tour.
We'll just start saying that every time something bad happens. Man, this is going to ruin my tour.
Yeah. Yeah, but that's what I'm loving. So I'm glad everybody liked it. Go check them out if you haven't looked at those memes. They're pretty good.
I have something I'm loving, I guess. It's like one of those things where I'm like, mental health's important.
Yeah.
I've had a really shitty couple weeks, and I got a new therapist, and she's really sweet. I'm gonna see how it goes. I was telling my husband last night, it's the first time I've ever had a therapist that's younger than me, which is odd for me, but I think, that doesn't mean she can't do
Right.
what I need to have done, right? She seems really, really great. Was really good about like setting boundaries about like a few things, which I always really appreciate. And I mean, I'm not loving it, but I'm loving it. I mean,
That's exactly
mental
how
health
I
is
feel.
very
Yeah,
important.
absolutely.
And I've needed a therapist for a while, so yay.
Yeah. I have a newer therapist too, and she doesn't just to say like, "Yeah, you're totally right," and I get offended. It's like, I know you're doing your job, but
Could you not do it?
Could you not make me feel like an ass while you're doing it?
What do you mean I might be wrong? No, I'm not. What about you, Mindy?
I'm loving beaver nuggets.
I'm sorry. Come again?
If you have a beaver nugget, you might.
So
I don't know what that is.
it's not what you're thinking.
Do you need to go to the OBGYN?
I wouldn't be loving it if
don't-
that were the case.
Hey, don't mind her. She just has beaver nuggets.
Now you're making me not love them.
Oh, tell me more.
Because now I can't. There's something to eat.
Oh.
So we recently had to go rescue our daughter from a long road trip, and we ended up at Buc-ee's, and they have these things called beaver nuggets, and they're like large. I don't know how to describe them. They're like
Vaginal?
no.
Harry?
Depends on the beaver.
Have you all seen that book series, Brenda and Her Beaver?
Yes.
Oh my god, it's so funny. She needs to do one about Buc-ee's.
Okay,
But-
so
crying
beaver
over- yeah.
nuggets.
I knew this conversation was going to take this turn.
They're large.
So
you eat them.
They're like corn pop cereal, but like better. They've got like brown sugar flavor. Y'all just don't know what you're missing. exactly the reaction I wanted, so I'm proud of myself.
I want to use that to describe myself. Like, I'm like Corn Pops, but better. Oh, man.
I cannot get it together.
Again, this is exactly the reaction I was hoping for. So I'm not sorry.
I'm glad you're enjoying your
They're
beaver
really
nuggets.
good, though.
Oh, man. That was a good one, Mindy. Thank you for that.
Messed up all my eyeliner.
Oh, that was fun.
Let's talk about queer Pride Month.
Oh, man. Who wants to go first?
Well, I wanted to start with just some Pride Month information and stats. So, as you know, Pride Month is currently celebrated each year in the month of June, but it's honoring the 1969 Stonewall Uprising in Manhattan. Have you all ever heard of this? Mm-hmm. Okay. So, it's important to note for our listeners that some history books call this the Stonewall Riots, but the name has been changed to Uprising as most people believe that the police and media have called them riots to excuse the police brutality that happened during the 6 days of the uprising, because they're like, no, they were rioting when they were really just like protesting and stuff. So according to Britannica.com, my favorite elementary school, Britannica, in 1969, the solicitation of homosexual relations was an illegal act in New York City and really in all cities, right?
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Everywhere.
Gay bars were places of refuge where gay men and lesbians and other individuals who were considered sexually suspect could socialize in relative safely away from public harassment. Many of these bars, however, were subject to regular police, raids and all of that. So one such well-known gathering place was for young gay men, lesbians, and transgender people called the Stonewall Inn, and it was in Greenwich Village in New York. It was called a dark, seedy, crowded bar, reportedly operating without a liquor license. So in the early morning hours of Saturday, June 28th, 1969, 9 policemen entered the Stonewall Inn, arrested the employees for selling alcohol without a license, roughed up many of its patrons, cleared the bar, and in accordance with New York criminal statute, they authorized the arrest of anyone not wearing at least 3 articles of gender-appropriate clothing. So they took several people into custody. This was the 3rd such raid on Greenwich Village gay bars in like a week, right?
Can I ask a question you may not have clarification for? If you had to have 3 items of clothing, if you just had like pants and a shirt, that doesn't count?
I mean, I think they were trying to pretty much just be able to arrest everyone.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
So at the time, there were a lot of people outside the bar who did not retreat or scatter as like they almost always did in the past, right? Like they'd be like, run, the police are going to arrest you. So their anger was super apparent and they were vocal as they watched the bar patrons being forced into a police van. They began to jeer at and jostle the police, and they did throw some bottle and debris. So accustomed to more passive behavior, even from larger gay groups, the policemen called in reinforcements and barricaded themselves inside the bar while 400 people outside rioted. The police barricade was repeatedly breached and the bar was set on fire. Police reinforcements arrived in time to extinguish the flames, and they eventually dispersed the crowd. So the gatherings outside the Stonewall Inn waxed and waned for about the next 5 days, and many historians characterize the uprising as a spontaneous protest against the perpetual police harassment and social discrimination suffered by a variety of sexual minorities in the 1960s. So, according to the Library of Congress, it's important to note that there were a number of uprisings against police and state brutality, harassment, and entrapment of the LGBTQ community in the U.S. in the years leading up to Stonewall. Stonewall was just kind of like the breaking point, right? So if you wanted to go read what these other uprisings were, and there is a link in the show notes, but one was the Pepper Hill Club raid in Baltimore in 1955. Over 162 people were arrested. Hazel's Inn in Sharp Park, California in February 1956. The Cooper's Donut raid in Los Angeles in 1959. The Black Night Ball in Wisconsin in 1961. Compton's Cafeteria raid in California in 1966, and the Black Cat raid in 1967. So we already had 10 years of these types of protests happening, right? So the first Pride March actually took place on June 28th, 1970, which was the 1-year anniversary of the Stonewall Uprising. So that's how we got the first Pride March.
Very cool.
Was due to this protest.
And unfortunately, over 50 years later, we haven't made much progress.
We've not. We still have people going, why do we have to have a parade?
Yeah.
Because they're marginalized. It's a marginalized group of people that you keep being assholes to. Mm-hmm. Right? Yep. So, yeah, that's how we got to where we are, but we still have a lot of work to do.
Yes.
Yeah. Just like with Women's History Month. Just like with Black History Month.
Right.
Like, yeah. Well, let's talk about our Pride Month book recommendations. Who wants to go first?
Why don't you go with
me?
Yeah.
Okay. So, first and foremost, friend of the pod, Elle Mitchell, one of my favorite books by her, Broken Reverie. Evie is the main character. She feels stifled. This is just kind of the summary of the book, and then I'll explain why it fits. Evie has what should be the perfect life, but she feels stifled and forced into a box that she doesn't really fit into. And she meets somebody from a brief moment in her past and tries to find herself again. Evie is bisexual, and that's a major part of the issues that she has with her fiance in the book. I will say this book contains infidelity by the female main character, which normally is a big red flag turnoff for me. And I don't like to read stuff like that, but it's Elle, and I trust her as an author. So she does a really, really good job of making you like understand and root for Evie, despite the fact that you don't root for her cheating on her fiance, right? And you guys have read Broken Reverie too, right? Yeah. So I love that book. That's my first one. And next is another series you guys have heard me talk a lot about, The Beast of the Briar series by Elizabeth Helen. Book 1 is Bonded by Thorns. So I've talked a lot about this in the past. It's a Why Choose Beauty and the Beast retelling that includes Rosie has 4 hot fae princes. And 2 of those princes are Dayton and Farron, who have been in love with each other and in a relationship together for years and years. And when Rosie shows up, they make room for her in their relationship as opposed to deciding, do they pick her over each other?
Right.
And then it wouldn't be a book recommendation if I didn't include The Bonds That Tie. And these are not main characters, but I wanted to include them. Sawyer and Gray are kind of like side characters. Sawyer is the brother of our female main character's best friend, and Gray is his boyfriend. So they're not main characters. They become bigger as the book series goes on, but I wanted to mention them because really the inclusion from the other characters, like literally nobody cares that they're gay. Like it's not a thing. It's not discussed. It's not, there's no kind of like self pat on the back moment from the author. Like sometimes in books, characters will think to themselves like, wow, isn't it great that nobody cares that Sawyer and Gray are together? You know what I mean? Yeah. Like they'll give themselves that moment. Yeah. Like they just exist, and it just is. Nobody cares. And I really, really love that. So I recommend that. How great is our society that none of us care? Like nobody thinks that. That's what I wrote in my notes.
That means there actually is a problem.
Yes.
I know, right? And then Saint from the Priest series, which I've talked about the series again recently, but here we go again. So book 3 of the Priest series by Sierra Simone focuses on Aidan, who gave up his millionaire life to become a monk. And he left his boyfriend and love of his life, Elijah, in the process of becoming a monk. Saint follows them as they are reunited for Elijah to write an article about monastery breweries, which is a hard word to say. Breweries. So this book has second chance romance, forced proximity, and really a very beautiful depiction of mental health struggles and also of religion and a religious experience. So I thought I really just enjoyed that a lot. And then last but not least, I just want to briefly mention this because of an upcoming book, not because of a book that's out yet. So Elle Kennedy's Campus Diaries series, which again, I have talked about before. The Graham Effect is book 1 in that series. And then the Dixon Rule is book 2 that just came out. In the Dixon Rule, there are 2 hockey players who are kind of side characters a little bit in the background. They start to get a reputation for the 2 of them having threesomes with girls. And it's discussed in the Dixon Rule. It's like other people are like noticing that it's happening, and then one of those characters has a conversation with one of the main characters in the Dixon Rule where he kind of talks about his conflicting feelings about how these relationships are developing, and he's not sure if he really likes it and how he really feels about it. And apparently the next book in the Campus Diaries series is going to focus on these 2 hockey players.
Oh, okay.
And I guess from what I understand, they're both of them together, their love interest. So I'm not really sure how that's going to play out. If it's going to be a why choose, if they're going to be the guys together and also the girl.
Right.
I'm not really sure how that's going to play out, but I wanted to mention it because it seems like it fits. Maybe. but I'm also the resident.
It's in that like exploring, questioning vein.
Right.
Yeah.
So those are my books. They're all good. I like them. What about you guys?
I have quite the variety, although now I'm looking, I'm like, oh, there's a lot of hockey in this one. But
Shocker.
We would expect nothing less. It's like, oh, Whitney mentioned the bonds that tie.
Or, oh, all of Deb's are fantasy.
Right.
I can't believe it.
But I can't obviously talk about anything Pride without mentioning Emily Rath, because really all of her books have a LGBTQ aspect to them, except for, well, no, actually Pucking Wild does, because she's bisexual.
Yeah.
But I wanted to particularly point out Whiskey and Sin, because it is a male Omega-verse novel, and it's just very different from everything else she's written. And it's very, very good. It's a standalone. It's one of those that you don't feel like you have to get invested in. You have to get invested in the world, but you don't have to get invested in like a series.
Yeah.
And it's just really, it's beautiful. It's got a mental health like tone to it as well, and like there's an alpha and an omega, and it's really sweet and a really, really good read. But then she also has her sapphic fantasy romance coming out in December, and it's called North is the Night. So she just like has her little fingers in all aspects of Pride, which just sounds gross, but whatever.
I'm excited about the December book because it's her fantasy book.
I am too. Like, she's been wanting to write fantasy for a long, long time, and I just love that it's a sapphic romance. I think it's branching out quite a bit. I mean, from what she's been doing, and I just think it's going to be really exciting.
Because she started with the Regency books.
She started with the Regency.
And then moved into the hockey books. And now is going into fantasy, right?
Yes.
But she also has the Omega-verse.
And then she has that one little Omega-verse.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. The next one I have is one called Him by Serena Bowen and Elle Kennedy. They co-wrote it. And it's also hockey players. One of them is out and proud, and the other one is exploring his sexuality. And it's a dual POV between the two characters and the two authors. So like Serena Bowen writes one POV and Elle Kennedy writes the other one. And there's a sequel called Us, and then there's a novella called Epic about like their relationship and how it grows. And this was the very first audiobook that I ever listened to.
Oh, really?
All the way through. And it was actually a recommendation from Alphabets and Audiobooks.
Oh.
So shout out to him. It was really, really good. I really enjoyed that one. And then the next one is also a hockey book. Good God. But it's by a friend of the podcast, Kristen Granada. It's the second in her hockey series, but it's an interconnected standalone. So you could read it without having read the other books. And I really love this one because it explores a polyamorous relationship that's FFM, which I feel like is kind of underrepresented right now.
Yeah.
It's about 3 high school friends who reunite later in life, and 2 of them are married, and there's a history with the third. So this is one of the spiciest one in her series so far, and if you read the reviews, many people agree with that. It's just really, really good. It's just, again, something that you don't see very represented out.
Is this in Kristen Granada's series? Is it one where you have to start with book 1, or is it like a shared world? You could read them out of order.
It's a shared world, and you can read them out of order.
Okay.
Yeah. Because I actually read the first one, and then I read the third one, and then I went back and read the second one because I don't know why. I think I arc read the third one, and then I was like, oh, I never read the second one. And
you just wanted to be different.
I did. I just want to be a rebel. The fourth one I've already talked about, so I'm not going to go into it a whole lot, but it's called A Guy Walks Into My Bar. It's Lauren Blakely. It's hockey adjacent. It's just that one of the guys is a hockey player in the U.S., but it's not even a prominent feature in it. It's just that it's a roadblock because the other guy owns a bar in London. So it's a long distance kind of issue, but they fall in love and they're both pursuing their dreams, so that causes problems. I just recommend the audiobook because Shane East narrates the British character, and it is hot. And then finally I've got one that's a lot different actually, and it's Simon versus the Homo Sapiens Agenda by Becky Albertalli. It's a YA coming of age story, and it got a lot of press a few years ago because a movie came out, but the book is excellent. And the main character's gay, but he's not out, and he's been emailing with another guy who is also not out, and they become connected, and he really likes this guy, and he's ready to come out, but his email buddy's not. So it's all about that balance of wanting to be out, but also wanting your love interest to be comfortable enough to come out. And it's kind of like a twist at the end of who it is. So I won't give that away, but it was a really good read. And then I'm just going to throw these out because we've already talked about them on the podcast. I think Deb's going to talk about one of them too, but there's The Gunkle by Stephen Rowley, which is about the gay uncle, and it's not a romance, but it's a really good family feel good book. And then there's The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid, another really, really great sort of twist on the whole vibe of bisexuality. And then I think Deb's going to talk about Red, White, and Royal Blue by Casey McQuiston.
I am.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't know it was my turn.
Go ahead and do that, Deb.
I will.
So go.
Yeah, my first Pride Month rec, my first two are actually by Casey McQuiston. So there's Red, White, and Royal Blue, which we've talked about on the podcast before. It's about the son of the President of the United States falling in love with the Prince of England and their secret affair. And I will say, as I'm going through my books, all of my recs, I'm going to give you the synopsis of the book, but it's all the main characters are queer in some way. So the next book is by Casey McQuiston as well. It comes out in August. And I talked about this, I believe, last week on the podcast, but it's called The Pairing, where two bisexual exes accidentally book the same European food and wine tour and challenge each other to a hookup competition to prove they're over each other.
I love that.
It sounds
Been
perfect.
there.
So my third recommendation is actually one of my daughter's favorite books. She was able to ARC read for Ben Alderson, who wrote The Prince of Endless Tides. And this is an fantasy romance inspired by The Little Mermaid and Atlantis.
Oh.
And the tagline is, what if the prince and the sea witch fell in love in a world ruled by evil mermaids and vengeful gods?
Ooh.
My daughter said it was amazing.
Wow.
My next suggestion is Kiss Her Once for Me by Alison Cochran. It's a festive romantic comedy about a woman who fakes an engagement with her landlord only to fall in love with his sister, which I think is kind of hilarious.
That's cool.
And the next two, I'm not going to go into great detail with because I've talked about them at length on the podcast over the last couple weeks. The first one's Now Conjurers by Freddie Cloche. That just came out. And then Don't Let the Forest In by C.G. Drews, which comes out in August as well. And then finally, I recommend If Tomorrow Doesn't Come by Jen St. Jude. And the synopsis is, We Are Okay meets They Both Die at the End in this YA debut about queer first love and mental health at the end of the world and the importance of saving yourself no matter what tomorrow may hold.
Oh, that sounds fun.
I thought I had like a shit ton of recommendations, and I did. I just got through them quickly. I don't know how I did that. So yeah, and all of these will be linked in our show notes as well.
Yeah.
So everybody can go click on them.
A lot of books to add
Yes.
to your
to your TBR.
You have like one more week left in June. Get through them.
Or you could just read Pride Month recs all year round.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. I thank you for saying that. I will say before we move into the nerdiest thing of the week, Whitney, I just wanted to speak up about how to be an ally all year long, not just in
yes.
June. There are a couple of things that you can do. The first one being is just to speak up. Don't tolerate anti-LGBTQ behavior or jokes or anything that someone might think is funny, even if it, I'm like, don't be an asshole.
Right.
Make sure that you're fixing issues of misgender. So, for example, if someone identifies as a he, don't call them a she. Make sure that other people are not doing that either. And at the same time, it's perfectly fine and expected at this point that you are asking for someone's pronouns without making assumptions about them.
Can I add to that? Because my oldest went through several different iterations of whether he was bisexual, lesbian. Like, he went through a lot just trying to figure out who he was. The very first time when he came out as transgender and said he was binary, it was they, them pronouns. And I kept screwing it up. Like, I just did. Because when you live with someone for 16 years and call them something, it's hard.
Yeah.
And I kept, like, beating myself up about it. Like, I would say it and I'd be like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. And, like, I would make a big deal out of it. And he was very kind and said, you know what? As a transgender person, we really just would appreciate you correcting yourselves and moving on and not making a big deal out of it. And that was very eye-opening to me, because they're like, it's not like it's supposed to be this big thing and you're not supposed to, like, beat yourself up about it, because it just is. Right?
Yeah.
Right.
And they understand that people are learning and that they're going to make mistakes. So I would say the majority of, I guess everybody's different, but the majority of transgender individuals that I've run into have been the same way. Just correct yourself and move on.
Right. So, and this kind of goes with this too. Well, not really, but make sure you're educating yourself on issues within the queer community. It's important to not only read news and things that are happening about what's going on in your life, right? Mm-hmm. Especially for a marginalized group of people. And just make sure that you're understanding the LGBTQ history and that you're understanding your own privilege and your unconscious bias when it comes to a group of people that need more support. So just make sure you're being an ally all year long.
Yeah.
Don't be a dick. That's really all it boils down to.
Shall we discuss our nerdiest things of the week?
Who has the most?
I only have one.
I only have one.
Oh, I have the most this time. That's rare, actually. So my first one is that I booked 2 upcoming reading weekends, one for July and then one for next February, because we decided we needed to get it on the calendar at book club last night. And then we also booked our book club water slide date, or we picked our dates. We haven't actually booked it yet. And then also, we've talked about this on the podcast before. I have a free little library out in front of my house, and I actually bought a little stamp to stamp the inside of the book with, so you can see what free little library it came from.
Oh, that's awesome.
cute.
I
I'm
love
excited
that
about
idea.
it. Yeah.
that's cute.
So I'm going to be out there stamping up later after the podcast. It just came in yesterday.
A wild Friday night.
I know. I'll be out there with a glass of wine in my pajamas, stamping up books.
Oh, that's funny. What about you, Mindy?
Well, I looked at mine and I realized I sort of have 1.5. But
You lied.
I lied. But it all goes with the same thing. So on Tuesday night, I think I mentioned on last episode that I was going to see a concert, and it was Jenny Lewis. And when I ordered the tickets, it was with an old college friend of mine that we have recently reconnected here in Louisville. And then it's in Lexington. So I reached out to another college friend and said, would you like to go to dinner with us? And we're going to this show. And he was like, oh, I'm going to that show too. They were like literally 5 rows in front of us. It was hilarious. So we all met up for dinner with another friend in Lexington, also from the college. And we just had so much fun, like reminiscing about college stuff. And then went to the concert and fangirled over Jenny Lewis, because she's
adorable.
She is the coolest person ever. She's the kind of cool I strive to be. I just think she's an amazing woman, an amazing spokesperson also for Pride. She's just very outspoken about LGBTQ issues. And she's just a wonderful person. She's lovely.
Can I ask where you ate dinner?
It was called The Goose.
The Goose?
Yes.
Oh. My sister and I are going to a comedy show in Lexington in September.
Where is it?
I don't know.
If it's at the Lexington Opera House, it's within walking distance of this place. It was pretty good.
I'll have to look that up and see.
I had the best martini I've ever had there. It was like a limoncello, like fresh.
Ooh.
So good. Yeah.
Well, we're staying the night in Lexington.
Well, then you need to go.
Because both of us are driving an hour from where we actually live to go to the comedy show. So I'll have to look that up. Thank you so much. Well, my nerdiest thing of the week is not just reading Manacled, but apparently I read Manacled suspiciously fast. And some of our followers were questioning if, like, I'm on something. Which I thought was really funny.
They said, what's wrong with me? Why did it take me so long to read this? And I wrote back and I said, for the record, it took me 9 days. It took Whitney 48 hours.
Yeah, I think it was actually less than that. But I don't know. I read really fast. Although I did tell one of our followers, I was like, listen, I read really fast, but then I reread and find that I missed a lot of stuff because I'm reading too fast. So don't be like, oh, Whitney reads so fast and I read too slow. Like, no, you're actually getting all of the details. Whitney's just like getting the high plot point, like the high points, you know? So anyway.
That's how she has time to reread things 8 times.
Yeah, that's why I have to reread them 8 times. Wait a second, whose favorite? Well, that is it for today's episode. Yeah. Please keep listening for our interview with Antoine Bandele and visit us on Thursday. And everybody, enjoy your beaver nuggets.
Bye.
Hello, fellow nerds, and welcome to Our Nerdiest Thing. Today we are live with a very special guest, author Antoine Bandele. Antoine is an Amazon best-selling author in action, adventure fantasy, dark fantasy, sword and sorcery, African-American fantasy, and African literature. He was born and raised in Los Angeles, though he did spend 1 year in Fort Lewis near Tacoma, Washington, while his father served in the U.S. Army. He lives in Los Angeles with his girlfriend and cat. You can find him producing videos all over YouTube, including his own channel, which you should definitely check out. He is also an audiobook engineer. Antoine is appearing as a featured author at the 2024 Imaginarium Book Festival and is participating in the 2024 Lit Talks at Imaginarium. Welcome to Our Nerdiest Thing, Antoine. Thank you so much for being here.
Hello.
We are so glad to have you here, Antoine. What I would like to start out with is if you would just tell us about your path to becoming an author.
Well, first off, I started writing very young because my mom at the time, and that's what she eventually went to do. She's a social worker. When I was growing up, she was going to college for like all these like, child development classes. And so she, modeled that to her actual parenting. So there was a lot of nurturing of, my creativity, whether it would be like, drawing children's books or comics or things like that. Or, I remember there was one point either my mother or father like took me to like Smart and Final after I did one of my stories and like laminated it. And I thought it was like so legit. And this is like 1995, 96, where like if you see your name typed out somewhere or something like that, you're like, oh my God, my name's typed out. It's so cool. Now it's like, oh, whatever, like your name being typed out is like so commonplace. So yeah, I was doing that at first. And then by accident in high school, I believe it was 10th grade, because in California, you are only required to do 2 years of physical education. I don't know why that's the case. We should have 4 years of that. But
we only have one.
One in what state are you in?
We're Kentucky.
Louisville,
Kentucky. Yeah, that's ridiculous. We should have 4 years of physical education. That's just like, that should be part of it. And so I, on my 10th grade, that's my second year of high school, I wanted to just get it out of the way. Most of my friends were like, oh, I'm going to knock it out when I'm a senior. Like I'm doing it, it's freshman year and then do it as a senior. I think it's required as a freshman. And I was like, no, I'm going to knock it out. But then my counselor messed it up. And he actually had me go to a ceramics class, which was full. Then he had me go to an art class, which was full. And then I got into a film program class, which is just basically like the basics of like filmmaking and stuff like that. And then I started doing that. And then that is where like the next 6-7 years of my life were like dictated by, was like filmmaking. I actually went to a program called Inner City Filmmakers in the summer of 2008, where I won a screenwriting award because we had write screenplays at that award, and I like got like a grant for school. I think I bought my first camera with that, and so that should have been a sign. Like all my times like growing up, and then that point they're like, you should be writing, and I was like, no, I'm going to direct. And then the YouTube was popping off at that time. It's like, I'm gonna make YouTube videos. I'm gonna be a content creator, which I still am. I still am a content creator. I think that was one of the things you mentioned at the beginning. And so I didn't write again until the end of season 6 of Game of Thrones. Wow. And that was really not really because I was intending to write. I just Googled. I was like, oh, is there like an African Game of Thrones? And so I looked it up. That's how I found Nnedi Okorafor and like N.K. Jemisin. But they weren't writing exactly the kind of book that I was looking for. So as most writers do, they just write the book that doesn't exist. And so that's what I did starting in 2017 with my debut novel called The Kishi, which my brother brought up to me because he's a Dungeons and Dragons nerd, and he's a dungeon master most times for those. He's like, oh yeah, there's this little thing that says it's from Africa, this thing called the Kishi, and it literally was like just one paragraph, like one little note in like a Dungeons and Dragons campaign guide. And I was like, well, this is like really interesting. Why is this like there's nothing, no literature around this like at all, and there was nothing about it. So I created this whole mythology and like world around basically just this one creature, but then I built out this entire African inspired mythos around it. And then I went on to do other works, my most popular one being the TJ Young and the Orisha series, which is currently optioned for a screenplay done and recently got a director attached. So hopefully by they're hoping Labor Day maybe is when I can like talk about that, but I'm hoping I can talk about that soon. So yeah, like it progressively like the universe or whatever has kept telling me like keep writing basically, because every time I do it good things come from it.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Did you write the screenplay for the adaptation?
No. They got a gentleman which you guys will be familiar with. He has credits that are his whole thing is that he does adaptation of books. Like that's like his thing.
Okay.
And that's like his specialty or whatever. And he's a WGA writer, so we had to deal with that 9-month strike that was going on. So this has been going on. I think they optioned it back in 2021, I think, or 2022. So it's been about I even said this at the beginning, like when I told everybody that it got optioned. I was like, guys, it's optioned, be happy, but also don't expect anything anytime soon. These things take years. Hollywood is freaking fickle. But steps are in the right. What I can tell people is that steps are going in the right direction, which is the best you can hope for with this sort of a thing. But also to mitigate those expectations as much as possible, because again, Hollywood's fickle. They just had their worst last 4 weeks at the box office recently. So who knows? What's going on with that. But no, I'm not writing the screenplay myself.
That's exciting, though. So you mentioned this earlier, and your bio also mentions your dad taking you and your brother to an office supply store and having your books laminated and copied, which just speaks to my little reading nerd soul. I think that is amazing. So what kind of role has your family played in your support system as you've grown as an author? I know you talked a little bit about
I think I answered it already. I pre-answered it. It was the same. My dad was more of the jock for sure, which I also still appreciate because I'm very active in my adult life because of that. And it's something that I want to instill on my kids as well. Like, I don't want them to be just a nerd or just a jock. Like, I want them to be a jerky not nerd or a nerdy jock. Because he had me in like every sport. Like even me being left-handed. So I'm left-handed. Most people are like, oh, you use your creative brain. It's like, and that's sort of true because a lot of my family, like my grandmother is left-handed. I believe my mom, or no, I think my aunt is left-handed. So the ability was in me, but it wasn't what I was naturally going for. So like I would grab things with like my right hand, but then he would put things in my left hand. Because at that time in Major League Baseball, left-handed pitchers were very sought after in that sport because we have a natural moving ball and it's harder for, like a lefty on lefty to, hit off the baseball stuff, inside baseball stuff. But essentially I became a left-handed pitcher, or I became a left-handed person because of the sports that my dad wanted me to play, because he vicariously wanted to live through me, because previously he, I think, made it to like the minors or got invited to like the minors of the Mariners, the Seattle Mariners, but didn't make it. That's awesome. Or like either like didn't follow through with it or whatever it was. But basically just didn't make it to the majors. And so he's like, I'm going to get my son to make it to the majors. But then he burnt me out. And so I went to the creative route in high school.
I'm
right
also
there.
A lefty, by the way.
I was going to say my 10-year-old is a left-handed baseball player too. So I'm
yeah,
like,
I didn't know that.
They're sought after for sure,
right
especially if they're a pitcher. Yeah.
Yeah, he's first base.
Yeah, that's all we can play. We only can play pitcher, first base, and outfield. That's it. That's the only positions. Can't play anything else.
Yep.
I did not know that. I learned something today. I'm not a very big sports person. I like to watch hockey, and that's about it. But let's go back to your TJ Young and the Orishas series. And book 3, The Hero's Equinox, will come out later this year.
Yes.
We haven't really gotten to talk to many children's authors in the fantasy space, which means that it feels like there needs to be more of them. But what inspired you to write for kids?
I mean, I always was into, maybe it was because prior to that, like the Kishi, my debut novel, and then By Sea and Sky, which is my Sky Pirate series, is more old-timey and like archaic. So I have to like edit my natural voice a whole lot. And I really wanted to just do something more modern, because then I could talk about LeBron James and Steph Curry, like in the first chapter of the TJ books, and then not being like, well, you can't talk about them. They don't exist. Or, just using regular vernacular that I use, or slang that I can actually use. There's pros and cons to both. Like, with the fantasy archaic stuff, you can, the world building, I feel like you can be a little bit more expansive. You're kind of limited by a contemporary piece, which is what mine is. It's a contemporary fantasy, hidden world kind of situation. So very similar to like Percy Jackson, Harry Potter. But yeah, I enjoyed it so much more because my natural voice could come out of it. Now, in terms of children's book, why did I do that? At the time, I was working at a summer camp in Cheviot Hills. I was a summer camp counselor. And I just like the idea of like a summer camp, situation. Again, very similar to Percy Jackson. But in this case, TJ goes to like a remedial magic camp to like kind of like catch up with his magic, because he kind of sucks and everybody else at the camp sucks as well. So that I did that mostly for that reason, because I enjoyed summer camp when I was growing up. And the idea of like leaving home, because I never actually got I did the day camp, but I never did the sleepaway camp, which is what I always wanted to do. I always wanted to go to the Catalina Island camp, or go to some forest somewhere in like Northern California and do that. But we never could afford that. We only could do day camp. So yeah, I guess I was like vicariously living through TJ by sending him to like a sleepaway camp and having an adventure with like talking alligators and walking trees and things like that.
That sounds amazing. Would you consider this like a middle grade, or like what's the youngest that could read this? Because I work in an elementary school.
Well, it's a coming of age story, so it's definitely it's an age up series. So the first book is upper middle grade because it is between TJ is at the summer where he's going into high school. So he's leaving 8th grade, going into 9th grade high school in the U.S. And it ends somewhere around him going to university. I haven't decided yet if I'm going to let him have a leap year or if he goes straight to university. But the series ends with his first year, or his first year leading into university. So it's an age up kind of a thing.
Because this sounds amazing, and I'm always looking for more diverse perspectives for our library. I work in an elementary school library, and so I would love to have something like this in our library. I just think it's great.
Especially with a boy main character, because my 10-year-old is my son, and he loved Harry Potter, and he's I'm trying to find more books for him, and he is not interested in reading anything that does not have a guy as the the center of attention, which I totally get because I'm the same way. I only read about guys too. No, I'm just joking. There's not as much for young boys that are, especially like the fantasy kind of story that my kid is into. So I will
shout outs to Tristan Strong. Tristan Strong, I think, is one you should get to him because that one's younger. That one's like more solidly middle grade. Tristan Strong punches a hole through the sky in that whole trilogy. And then there's an older one. So it's funny. I'm actually sitting in between two very popular like Black fantasies, which would be Tristan Strong, which is like solidly middle grade. I even told the readers who enjoy that, I'm like, oh, first read that trilogy, and then you can age up into like TJ, and then when you get done with TJ, you can do like Blood on the Root, which just came out recently, New York Times bestseller. I think it just came out like 2 weeks ago, and that one's like about a hypothetical HBCU, which is a historically Black college but magical. So yeah, like TJ sits right in the middle of that because TJ is more about like high school times, and then Blood on the Root is obviously university, and then Tristan Strong is middle school.
That's awesome. I'm glad you mentioned that. We do have that in our library. So I should get that for you, Whitney, and let him read that.
Please.
So in addition to being an author, you're also the founder of AB Book Services. Tell us a little bit about how you're serving other indie authors through this company.
Oh yeah, so that expanded quite a bit. So I started because I was doing a co-authorship with an author from one of my, I think it was Skyfire Chronicles, so the prequel to that one. I like writing with other authors because I think that might be a carryover from my filmmaking days, because filmmaking itself is a very collaborative, endeavor. And same with books if you want it to be that way, but you also could, as a writer, just do it all on your own. But I do like collaborating with other writers. So during that time, I have a natural progression of how I do my production. And my last step is to do like an audiobook because I'm a multimedia major. I went to Cal State Northridge for multimedia. Again, like I spoke about the YouTube content creation. I was like, oh, I can do this. I can do like, an audiobook on my own. I used to work at Apple, oh my God, almost a decade ago. And if you work at a retail space or a restaurant in LA or in New York or any of the big cities, you're always going to be surrounded by performers and actors. So when I left, I was like, yo, you guys want to come out to like my little makeshift booth at my home studio and do some audiobooks? And so I did that for this project. And then the author was like, whoa, like who did your audiobook? And I was like, oh, just me, and some actors I knew from like my old workplace. He's like, yo, you need to like do this as a service for other authors. And I was like, I don't think anyone's trying to pay me for this. I was very, very wrong about that. And so I started doing that. And then it started expanding. So then I started offering like editing services because I got to know like a lot of editors. And like, hey, like for a finder's fee, I'll link you up with other people who are doing audio, and then they might need an editor for the next thing. And then I started doing formatting because I saw people were doing that. And I think we had like a podcasting that. So I started adding on like services as they became like relevant. And yeah, that's just how that it was like just a natural progression. And then also my friend being like, yo, get on your horse and like do that.
Always is nice to have those kinds of friends.
Oh no, for sure. Accountability. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. So we are going to see you at Imaginarium. We've already mentioned that in June. And that's like, but I think by the time this airs,
it's a week and a half, man.
We're like almost there. Is there anyone? Oh, you're nervous? Why?
Oh my! It's my first time ever doing a live event because I'm also selling there as well. So I'm like, I've already shipped 200 books to DC, and I'm like, man, and I'm like staying with a friend, and one of my narrator friends actually, who lives in DC, which apparently a lot of narrators live in DC for some reason. And yeah, so I'm just nervous about selling all of that and then like having all these books with me. You know what I mean? Like I don't want to be stuck with like
you're gonna do great. You're super personable.
Yeah, it'll be great. It's a really good event.
That's what everyone says, and that's why I brought 200 to begin with. I've had several authors independendly tell me like, oh my God, like I sold out of like all my hardbacks on like day one. I'm like, what hardbacks? Like people don't ever, because I'm used to going to like Comic Cons and usually they paperback, please, So like when they said that, I was like, all right, I'm trusting all of you right now. I'm bringing 200 books. And they're like, yeah, that's not even going to be enough. Like, you're going to wish you brought more. And I'm like, all right, let me just start with 200.
I'll be at your table so I can get them. Yes. Get your books for my kid when he's ready for it.
Is there anyone that is going to Imaginarium that you are excited to meet or like to see again at the festival?
Oh, well, yeah, I met Jessica Cage before at 20 Books Vegas last November. So I'm excited to see her again, especially because we have plans to collaborate on a lit RPG book that we want to do.
Oh, cool.
And then also, I know that we have Jasmine Walt. I've met her several times at 20 Book Vegas as well. Always like seeing her. Who else? Allie Dane, who isn't an author. She's a narrator who I've not yet met. She's one of my favorite narrators on our roster at AV Book Services. She lives in DC. She's separate from the other narrator that I was speaking about, which again, I'm saying there's so many narrators in DC. Really excited to hang out with her as well. So yeah, there's a few out there. Keisha McIntyre, definitely excited to meet her because I haven't met her in person yet. There's a lot of people who I know via, like online, but I haven't seen in person.
Like internet friends.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, we talked to Jessica Cage and Jasmine Walt both a couple of weeks ago. They're super fun. I just finished Jessica Cage's new book. I
accidentally summoned a demon boyfriend. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, the first chapter.
Yeah, I'm doing the audio for that one, actually. That's one of the audios I'm doing with Ruthie Bowles. And I think Ruthie Bowles is also supposed to be at Imaginarium as well.
Yeah, I opened to page 1, and the title, the chapter
juice?
Title is Booty Juice, and I was like, here we go. That's the tone for the rest of the book, right?
Yeah, heck yeah.
No, it was fun though. That's funny. Well, we're going to move into our nerdy and dirty speed round. So these are just questions for listeners to get to know you a little bit better. So there's no right or wrong answers, just the first thing that pops into your head. So first, what are you reading?
Oh, let me actually look. You guys use the Libby app by chance?
Yes.
Or familiar with the Libby app? It is amazing. Shout outs to the Libby app. If you guys ever, sometimes readers are like, I want, a free Animorphs. That's what I'm doing right now, currently. Which, if you remember, that's like the old middle grade series back from the late 90s.
Oh yeah,
I was just about to be like, wait.
The covers with the weird morphing where there's like a rhino and you see like a child,
yes.
the in between thing. Yeah, it actually holds up really well. I'm actually listening to the audiobook version of it for the first time, and the audiobook is really, really good. Actually,
that's cool.
And then I have one coming up. There's a newer one.
I was gonna say there's a newer series out called Spirit Animals, and it's like different authors. Yeah. Have you read that one?
No, I haven't.
Got a similar vibe,
but it's more magical rather than it being like a sci-fi reason.
It is. It's definitely more like fantasy. Yeah,
that was a blast from the past. I was not expecting.
I wasn't doing that either because I was like, "What am I doing right now?" Let me look real quick. But by the way, that one's due in 2 days, so I actually have to hurry up and finish it.
Well, that might be the same answer for the next question, which is, what are you listening to?
Oh, well, there it is.
The audiobook, right?
Will be that. Well, I will say the other one that I have that's coming up after Animorphs will be, are we smart enough to know how smart animals are? Because I like nonfiction as well. And that's the next one that I have on queue.
I feel like the answer to that is probably not no.
No, because intelligence is so different across different species and things like that too.
Yeah, my husband loves to watch the planet and animal documentaries on Netflix. And he's always like, did you know? Blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, no, I don't know why I would ever know that. He would probably enjoy listening to that book. Next, what are you watching?
Oh, what am I watching right now? Tokyo Vice. Not very middle grade, young adult. That's like extremely adult the show right there. But Tokyo Vice is one that I am watching.
What are you loving?
What am I loving? I'm loving softball. So I play adult softball during my weeknights in Santa Monica. That will be something that I love right now.
Do you play with like a group of people that you know?
Yeah. I play on 2 teams. Mondays are my co-ed team. Wednesday is my men's team.
That's fun. That's cool. I'm not coordinated enough to do anything like that. I read books.
You gotta be like, come on Saturdays. That's why we have our casuals. We have our casuals on Saturdays.
I would just cheer everybody on from the sidelines.
If you did that long enough, we would get you to get on the field.
Where is your favorite spot to read right now?
Favorite spot to read? Probably just my couch, like with Mushe, with my kitty. I don't know if this is video or not. If it's not video, there's a cat that's on camera here, guys.
And it's adorable.
Very, very adorable cat. Who is an artist or a song that you can listen to on repeat all the time?
Right now, because it changes, it's like a revolving door. But currently, it'd be Sabrina Claudio, who is a R&B artist who I enjoy a lot. She was my soundtrack all through Japan when I went there in 2019. Because apparently, if you go to a different country, you can't like download certain kind of songs because you're in the wrong jurisdiction. So that was the only album I had at the time because I had it for like the airplane or whatever.
Yeah.
But it was nice because that was like the soundtrack of like, and now whenever I listen to it, I think about like being on the train, the bullet trains, or, walking around like Tokyo or whatever.
Oh, that's cool. I have that. I love that. Like when a song comes on and you're like, oh, it takes you back to a certain like point in your life. I love that. What is your favorite children's or young adult fantasy or sci-fi book?
If we're talking about singular book, it would have to be The Giver. If we're talking about series, then it's going to be Harry Potter.
Both excellent choices. Yeah.
Yes, I was going to say. I agree.
You are correct. And then last but not least, what, in your opinion, is the best fantasy or sci-fi book to movie adaptation?
Oh, that's hard because there are not very many. Wait, no, Lord of the Rings. Lord of the Rings. That is the answer. That is literally the answer.
It's so good.
There is no other better answer than Lord of the Rings. Like the movie adaptation of that is still has not been matched, I would say. Like because they recently came out with the Giver, which was okay. They came out with Ender's Game, which was okay. Like or it's bad. It's either okay to bad. There's not too many like great adaptations. Good,
yeah. No, I would totally agree with that. That's also the correct answer. You did a great job.
yeah. No, that was like that's kind of easy. That's like right off rip.
Yeah. So, Antoine, where can readers best connect with you? Is it through social media or through your website or somewhere else?
My website is like the hub for everything. So it'll send you to whatever spot you like hanging out the most. But the home base would be the website. It's just my first and last name.com.
And where can we purchase your books?
Again, my website will also sing you everywhere, but I'm wide distributed. So Libby is a favorite one. I always love it when I see like my book is like it has a 2-week hold or something like that. I'm like, what? My library book has a 2-week hold? That's awesome. People are reading it. And people are like waiting for it, But library app, if you want to do that, like I'm very, very into libraries, and people don't realize that authors get paid via libraries. Like that seems to like go over people's heads. Like, I want to support you financially. It's like the library is like the best way to do it. There I'm also like on Amazon. I'm on Barnes & Nobles, Target, Powell's, like all the like completely wide. I'm like pretty much everywhere.
Do you do signed or special editions through your website?
My website I do signed editions. Yeah, and then the best way to do it too is I do a lot of live events in Southern California. So like most recently I was at what event was I just at? It was like pretty big. I mean, I was at USC Festival of Books, which is huge. Like if you are a book person, you have to be there. But no, I did a Comic-Con recently. What was the most recent one I did? I did WonderCon, but it was one after that I did. Oh, Comic-Con Revolution was the one I was just recently at.
Well, that leads right into my next question, which besides Imaginarium, what upcoming events or conventions do you have on your schedule?
I just added 3, and I'm thinking about a 4th. The one that's most recent besides Imaginarium is going to be the MorphinCon. So there's like a Power Ranger convention that exists. So I'm gonna be doing that for the first time this year. And I have LA Comic Con coming on, so Los Angeles Comic Con. And then I have Orange County's Children's Book Festival. And then I'm thinking about doing something called Splatoon. They invited me. It's like a Nickelodeon Comic Con, or a convention, I should say. But I'm debating whether, because I kind of want to go in with like 4 of the authors with that one to like share the table space, the booth space. So we'll see. Potentially, I'm going to the Nickelodeon convention as well.
Those are like the coolest conventions ever.
I know.
It's a sneak attack. So here's the thing. So the last con I was at, the Ontario one, my booth partner was like shocked at how many sales I was getting, even though I wasn't like standing up and like, trying to talk to every person that's going by, because the hack with live events, particularly Comic Cons, is that everyone's dressed up as something. And if you're a geek, you're going to recognize 80% of the things there. Right. So I just wait until I recognize something, compliment somebody, just talk to them, just vibe on whatever that thing is. Not even necessarily thinking about a book sale, just like, getting to talk, just to like break the ice. That's a
Connect
big
with
thing.
People. Yeah.
Yes. That's the big thing. It's just breaking the ice with someone so that they do become curious or whatever like that. And I try to have them lead into the curiosity rather than me being like, books, like buy the books now. It's more like if someone comes by with like a Gryffindor robe, then I'll shout Ravenclaw at them because I think Ravenclaw is superior to Gryffindor. And also I mistrust anybody who is automatically Gryffindor because they just, they want to join the Harry Club or whatever. So I'll do that, and I'll raise them for that for a little bit or whatever, and then maybe talk about, oh, did you hear that they're doing like a full cast audio for Harry Potter? And then we'll literally just talk about what is a geek out, and even for me too, because I think for me, even doing that even doesn't lead to like a sale or anything like that. It's a way just to like, I guess, open up the social palette kind of, so that you are ready and, going for like the next person who's coming up, and you're keeping it like super cash. Oh, kitty cat alert.
Here's my baby. This is Pepper.
Peppa. Hi, Peppa.
Hi, baby.
I love how your background is like blurring blurring the cat.
It's
Like,
blurring
the
cat.
face.
that's so funny. Well, I'm super jealous of a Power Rangers convention. Honestly, I was so obsessed with that. And
Yeah,
I've
that
gotten my
seems like
kid
it'll be a lot of
into
fun. Yeah.
my 10-year-old watches like the original show now.
Mighty
And-
Morphin? Oh my.
Yeah, it's on Netflix. Yeah.
Oh, okay, that's what's up.
Yeah, and they have they have like a million seasons, but he likes the original one. And he's like, I think the White Power Ranger is going to be on next or whatever.
Yeah, Tommy.
That's really funny. I'll have to tell him, like the guy I
And
just
then
talked
have
to.
him watch the wait, if he knows the White Ranger, do you have him watch the movie? Because the White Ranger, I think, is introduced in the movie first, and then he converts over to the TV show.
We haven't watched the movie yet, for sure. But
so yeah, you skipped how they even got their ninja powers, because that's how, like, in between Mighty Morphin and the Power Ranger Ninja, I don't forget what it was called.
He doesn't watch them in. He doesn't watch them in order.
They're just like that, which is how you can watch them, because they're all standalone episodes.
Right. Well, he skips around to the different seasons, which are also the different like casts and different characters.
I'm watching Power Rangers in Space this year, or Turbo this one.
Oh man. Well, Antoine, this is Our Nerdiest Thing. We do like to end all of our episodes sharing what our nerdiest thing of the week is for any given week. And a lot of the times it is book related, but it doesn't have to be. We are well-rounded nerds that like all kinds of nerdy things. We would love to hear what your nerdiest thing of the week is.
Oh my goodness. So I just because I'm trying to replay Knights of the Old Republic, which, if you're not familiar with, is a very popular RPG in the Star Wars universe that came out in 2003, I want to say, when that was like the height of like the prequel trilogy stuff. And that's when I was an impressionable, preteen at that time. And I am right now trying to build an entire character sheet, like, because I'm trying to like do a dark side playthrough, and I'm trying to figure out like if I want to be like a combat specialist. I'm trying to figure out all the stats to put into like things. I'm trying to like really, really do it. So it's like, how people in D&D will like, put their stats and things like that. I'm currently doing that before I'm even playing the game. I think I've been doing that for like the last 2 weeks, like trying to figure out how to build my character before actually even playing the game.
You're like I will be fully prepared.
Oh no, for sure.
I think that is a really excellent choice for a nerdiest thing of the week. That's fantastic. I would say me getting excited about the Power Rangers thing needs to be my nerdiest thing of the week. The next time we talk about it.
Well, if you're in California, SoCal, you got a Morphin Con out here.
Man,
God, don't we wish?
We'll have to.
That's
make
what my buddy said too. He
trip.
lived in the Midwest, and he said the same thing. He was like, "What? Why is that? Is this here?"
Yeah, we need that everywhere. Tell them to travel, please.
Travel.
Share the love, please.
Yeah. So share the morphin power. Well, Antoine, thank you so much. This has been really fun to chat.
You too, guys.
Like what you heard in this episode? Follow Our Nerdiest Thing on Instagram at instagram.com/Our Nerdiest Thing or Facebook at facebook.com/Our Nerdiest Thing. We love hearing from fellow nerds. Email us at ournerdiestthing@gmail.com.